Okay, this chapter is called Spider Days. This is the next progression in the very beginning of the journey, 1964. Here I sit with pen in hand. Now I have opened my story. Jack Kennedy and Bobby Dylan stand within its chrysalis, but there are so many others who dance around them. Leo Tolstoy is there, and Hermann Hesse. From these two I learned that from this place we move on in continuity. Death is birth, and birth is death. As we move, as we leave one womb and prepare to enter another. Heaven and hell are not fixed places, but the inner reflections within the spectrum of ever-fluid light and dark. Now I would learn to walk, to talk, to think, to eat, to learn, all over again. And that process begins from the moment of conception. Birth is simply the moment in which we've become strong enough to push our way through to the other side. And we don't even know, at least consciously, that there is another side, until we find ourselves peeking around at it for the first time. When I was in my senior year at Lincoln High in Denver, my French class went to dinner at a French restaurant and attempted to read the menu and order in French. It was much easier, by the way, to translate Saint-Exupéry's Le Petit Prince into English. But when we'd accomplished our task, a few other girls and I felt we weren't quite ready to head home, and one of the girls had the thought to go see what went on at the mysterious coffee house we'd all heard tales about, the Green Spider. And off we went. None of us would have dared embark on such an escapade alone, but together we jumped in someone's car and went off in the still early evening to have an adventure. The Green Spider was up on 17th Avenue, a fairly busy street exiting the downtown area. It was sandwiched in between two other mysterious places, a bookstore come beat art gallery and a little storefront with Denver Folklore Center painted across its front. 3 or 4 young high school girls in their French dinner finery walked tentatively through the door and into the new and intriguing atmosphere of a coffee house. Mind you, this would have been 1962, and we were not like kids on the coasts of America. Beatniks were an oddity in Denver. And parents, for the most part, felt beatnik hangouts to be the last place on earth they would approve their children to be sitting down for a cup of coffee in. But then, as is ever the case with the teenager, that's what made the whole idea fun. We sat down in the front room, a narrow, smoke-filled room with huge canvases of mermaid-looking girls with long, flowing hair. The girls themselves, at least as best I'm able to recall from the distance of so many years, were green with reddish hair. We sipped our coffee and peered around to see who came here. What did they look like? How did they act? We sat pretty silently for just a short while, then left. But I had been there then, and it was time to go back, because it was into this world I was being called. Now I must find my way in, not to look tentatively about this time, but to stay, to belong. I already told you I had gone out to the music store that morning after the fertilization of my slumbering little seed. Well, I also read in a magazine article that beatniks tended to live on candy bars. Go figure. So now I went dutifully to the store and bought boxes of them to put in my tiny refrigerator. Naturally, if one is to become something, one must attend to every detail, right? So then, what of wardrobe? another essential. And where to go? Where else? Denver Dry Goods Western wear seemed about my best bet. Throughout childhood, I'd been garbed mostly by the revolving choices in Montgomery Ward's catalog. Pretty dresses with hat, shoes, and bag to match. You get the idea. But now I had to think, and think fast. I was in motion. The green spider was calling, and scared to death or not, I was answering. Several pairs of tan khaki-type pants, army green t-shirts, army green and tan overshirts, and soft leather lace-up ankle boots later, I was as ready as I was going to be. Except, wait a minute, I would have to look as though I hadn't completely come in from the suburbs with square written all over my face. So I stopped in to the library and picked up a little Ferlinghetti poetry. Now I was prepared. I came home that night from work, waited until the hour seemed appropriately nocturnal, and began my transformation before the trusty bathroom mirror. Hair being for quite some time to come a seeming insurmountable problem, I placed back over the frizz the wonderful black scarf, my own personal touch. Still a snowy wonderland, dear Denver. Off I trudged. Only 6 blocks or so my journey would require. How scared, after all, can you get with such a short distance for the mind to play its annoying tricks? Eyes straight ahead, book in hand, one step at a time. That is, until about midway. About midway, I put one foot down and the other refused to comply. The years of my mother's verbal tyranny filled my inner ear with self-doubt and choked my steps. Who was I to walk into that world? I was no artist, no poet, no musician. I was an elevator operator. I had not one credential. At the time, I had no idea that my having received a steady stream of D's and F's through high school while plowing hungrily through Tolstoy and Hesse would have told anyone that those steps I was taking within the time I was living were pretty much inevitable. All that came to mind was my father. I loved my long-suffering father. My father never made waves. He never fought back against my mother's tirades. He was never scary, never mean. He also never jumped out in front of traffic, metaphorically speaking. All his life he kept to his place. Now I was about to step out of mine, and I heard my own voice as I turned to walk back home say, "No, this is what my father would do. This is what my father would do." And I turned around again. Above the entrance to the Green Spider was a very large, okay, huge, papier-mâché green spider. Tonight I would step for the second time beneath his 8 legs and enter his domain. I was not just stepping through on a lark this time, though. I was stepping through on a mission of transformation, and my heart was beating with a frightening fury. It happened to be a Thursday night, the very slowest night, as I learned soon after. There was not one customer. No possible means of somehow remaining inconspicuous. I ducked my head down, sat at a little round black table, opened my Ferlinghetti, and waited for one of the 2 girls who seemed to be working to come over. I waited, and waited, and waited, and waited, for nearly an hour. The 2 girls were talking away to one another. But I was invisible. I was self-consciously attempting to look studious, with my book in front of me, but Ferlinghetti wasn't helping much. And I was a nervous wreck and getting mad. If I'd known the words at the time, which I didn't, I'd have used elitist snob to describe my take on these two. I was a customer after all. Right? Wrong. I wasn't at the Woolworths counter here. To them, I probably appeared to be just grooving on my book, maybe waiting for someone. But in my fragile mind, I felt virtually shunned. At long last, I staggered out into the night, determined now never to return. My mission was a bust. These people were not worth all my careful preparation, my fast-beating heart. I determined to call the whole thing off. My boyfriend at the time was the 40-year-old head window dresser at the Denver Drive. He was a weathered recluse who had helped to build the Spider in a less reclusive time. A disillusioned ex-part of the big crowd. And he told me romantic stories to which I had clung. To him, I was kind of a protege, a malleable child. To me, he was a connection to that world into which I hoped to immerse myself. He had known of my plan for the previous night. He probably even suggested the Ferlinghetti. This was not, however, a road he had any intention of taking with me. He was out of the scene and fully intending to remain so. He would try to groom me, but I would walk this road alone. Now he listened as I ranted about the unbearable snub of those girls, and his advice was really that of a father. He told me simply that I had to go back. I couldn't give up that easily. I had to go back and go back again until they noticed me. Sooner or later, he was sure, someone would approach me and invite me into conversation. But I mustn't give up. I must return, no matter how difficult. Bob Turner had left the scene, but his protege would enter. Shall I go on?